Can I tell you one of the biggest differences I see between designers who stay stuck and designers who scale? And it's not talent, it's not taste. It is not whether they have the perfect Instagram grid or the prettiest portfolio, the most polished welcome packet. No, none of that. It is actually just down to one decision. And that one decision sounds simple, but it is actually incredibly hard for most creative business owners. It is the decision to stop treating every project like a personal referendum of your worth and start treating it like business intelligence. Because here's what happens for so many designers. You finish the project, you're utterly exhausted. The client is mostly happy and your photos are absolutely beautiful. The team is ready to move on and you are already behind on the next project. And so I don't know about you, but it's easy to close the file, send that final invoice, and maybe post a pretty image and run straight into the next thing. But what you do not do is stop and ask, what actually happened here? What worked? What broke? Where did we lose money? Where did I lose time? And where did I step back into work I should not have been doing? What needs to change before we do this again? And that, my friend, is the meeting that scales you. Today, we're talking about the post-project debrief. But more than that, we're talking about that CEO level decision underneath it. The decision to look honestly at the facts. The decision to receive feedback without falling apart and to give feedback without making it personal. The decision to use data as information, not accusation. And if you're an interior designer who's tired of repeating the same problems on different projects, this episode is going to give you a whole new way to look at your business. Welcome back to Success by Design, the podcast for interior designers who want to build profitable, sustainable, deeply aligned businesses without burning out, selling out, or losing the love for the work that brought you here in the first place. I'm Katie Decker Erickson, interior designer, business coach, and host of this show. And I'm not coaching from a theoretical mountaintop. I am still in the work. I'm still running a design firm. I still understand the realities of client expectations, especially in this climate, team dynamics, revisions, vendors, procurement, installs, budget, scope, and the list goes on. It can be a real emotional roller coaster, and that can be really challenging. This is why I care so much about having this conversation with you, because the longer I'm in this industry, pushing 20 years now, the more convinced I am that most designers do not stay stuck because they are not good enough. They stay stuck because they are not looking at the right information. Or maybe more honestly, they're avoiding the information that would tell them exactly what needs to change in their business. And so today we're going to talk about the one decision that separates stuck designers from scalable firms. And that decision is this: will you treat every completed project as proof of your worth, or will you treat it as information for your growth? Because that decision changes everything. Okay, let's lay out the scenario. Honestly, you may not have to imagine very hard a recent project. You've probably lived some version of this. It started with so much excitement. The client loved your work. The scope sounded clear in the beginning. There was momentum and possibility, big ideas, and beautiful inspo images, and all the reasons you said yes. But somewhere along the way, things started to get, well, a little more complicated. The client had more opinions than expected, and the spouse was totally fine with whatever. Well, they suddenly had very strong thoughts about how things were going. The budget that was flexible became very not flexible, and the contractor needed answers faster than your process allowed. The client kept asking, can we just see one more option? And that, of course, turned into 3 options. And then it became a full redesign of something everyone had already approved. Meanwhile, your team is asking you questions you thought you already knew how to answer, and you had to jump back into details you thought you had delegated. That's the worst feeling in the world. You found yourself saying, it is just faster if I do it myself. You were answering messages at night, maybe holding details in your head. You were trying to protect your team and your margin at the same time, as well as the original design and your sanity. And then install happened, and somehow, because designers are magicians, it came together. The room looked beautiful, the client smiled, the photos were lovely, and everyone exhaled. And then someone said, okay, great, what's next? And that is the moment I want to freeze, because that moment right there is where so many designers make the decision that actually keeps them stuck. They move on too fast. They do not pause. They do not debrief, study the project, or celebrate what did work. Also, maybe not naming what was broke and asking what it cost. They do not make a decision about what needs to change, and they just say, phew, we survived another one. And then they take that same broken process, the same unclear boundary, the same underpriced service, and the same communication gap, as well as the team confusion, and drag it right into the next project. Different client, same problem. Different home, same chaos. Different budget, same leak. Different timeline, same exhaustion. And then 6 months later, they are wondering why they are working harder than ever, but not actually scaling. All right, let's talk about the cost of skipping that debrief, because it feels efficient in the moment. It feels like you're saving time and being positive and you're keeping momentum going. And it feels like, why go back and pick apart something that is already done? But the truth is, when you skip that debrief, you are not avoiding the problem. You're just preserving it like a really good canned item. You allow it to become part of the operating system of your business. And this right here, this is where I see designers getting into trouble, because a beautiful finished project can hide a broken back end. The portfolio image does not show the 47 unpaid hours you spent managing client indecision, right? The reveal photo does not show the team member who cried in her car because she did not know what was expected of her. Maybe that Instagram post does not show the margin that got eaten up by scope creep. And that client testimonial does not show that you answered texts at 10:30 at night for 4 months. So from the outside, the business looks like it's growing, but on the inside, it is getting heavier. And that is the dangerous part, because you're really talented and you're good at making things look beautiful. We can make a messy process look polished from the outside and exhaustion look like excellence. Maybe it's an overextension that looks like a high-touch service, and you make unpaid labor look like generosity. I have so many of you on my roster right now struggling with that. We can make a lack of boundaries look like client care, and sometimes we can do that so well that even we believe it, until we're depleted, resentful, the team starts making mistakes, the profit isn't there, and until we start dreading the business we built. And I just want to gently say that is not a sign that you're not cut out for growth. It's a sign that your business is begging for leadership. All right, let's talk about the misdiagnosis here, because this is where I see designers misdiagnosing this issue. They will finish a hard project and say, oh, I just need better clients. And don't get me wrong, maybe you do need to refine your client fit, and that might be true. But sometimes the issue is not that the client was bad. Sometimes the issue is that the process didn't actually lead them well. The expectations weren't clear. The decision-making path was too loose, and maybe the scope was too vague. And then you train the client to believe everything was included because you kept saying yes without naming the cost. I have designers who say to me, oh, I just need to charge more. Yes, I'm almost always in favor of designers charging appropriately. You know this about me. I want you profitable. I want you paid. I want your expertise honored. But see, charging more does not fix a broken process. This is why other coaches who just go out promoting profit, it's like slapping a Band-Aid on someone who needs a tourniquet. We got to fix the issue underneath, because charging more does not automatically make you a better communicator or create better team clarity or stop scope creep. In fact, if you raise your prices but do not improve the back end, you may simply create a more expensive version of the exact same chaos. All right, another misdiagnosis I see is, gosh, Katie, I just need a bigger team. And again, maybe you really do, and maybe the business has outgrown your current capacity. But if you add people to an unclear process, you're not going to get freedom. You're going to get confusion and questions and more management and more people waiting on you, because that business, like we've talked about, it still depends on what is living in your head. And so a bigger team does not solve the lack of structure. I was just working through this with a coaching client who wanted to hire someone. And I said, time out just a minute. You can't bring in a project manager until they know what projects they have to manage. And if they don't know how a project is structured because your project management software isn't there, we have a bigger problem. Yeah. In fact, just adding more team players is just going to amplify every problem that you have. Here's another one I hear. I need a new system, a new project tool, a new app, a new platform, a new template. Oh, I know we all love shiny things. We're designers. Let's be honest. I love a good tool and a good process and anything that helps us get information out of our head. But a tool will not make the hard decision for you and tell a client, that's outside of scope. Happy to do it. We just need to amend the contract. A tool will not decide that your minimum fee needs to increase, or it will not tell you that a team conversation needs to happen, that one that you know you're secretly avoiding. And a tool will not ask, why did we miss margin on this project? It's not going to lead your business. Only you can do that. And that is the whole point of this episode. The issue is often not that you need more leads or more software or more staff or more time. It's that you need to look at the business you already have and be willing to learn from it. All right, here's the shift I want you to make. Your project is not just a project. It is not just a portfolio piece or a client experience or a revenue event. It is business intelligence. Every project is giving you information. The big question here, folks, is whether you're collecting it. A completed project can teach you how to price better. It can teach you where your processes are unclear, which clients are a fit and which ones are not, what your team really needs from you. It can also teach you where your contracts need to be stronger, or which services are more profitable, or even where your creative energy is best spent. It can teach you what to repeat and what never to do again. But here's the thing, and this is the kicker. It will only do that if you are willing to look. And that is what CEOs do. They do not just move from task to task. They study patterns, they make decisions and create structure, looking at numbers and listening to feedback. Most importantly, asking better questions. And they are not interested in protecting the fantasy that everything went perfectly. Instead, good CEOs, not business owners, are interested in building a business that gets stronger every time it performs. And that is what a post-project debrief does. See, it's going to turn that experience into wisdom, that frustration into process, and mistakes into margin. It takes the client confusion and turns it into better communication. And it turns team tension into clearer roles. It turns the mess into a method. And that right there, that is how you scale. Not by doing everything perfectly, but by refusing to waste the lesson. Okay, let's get really, really practical because I don't want to say this to stay inspirational and vague. I want you to be able to take this episode and use it. I care about that in every single episode we do. A post-project debrief is a meeting you hold after a project closes. Ideally, you do it while the details are still fresh, but after everyone has had just enough room to breathe, 5 to 7 days. I want to be very clear. This is not a blame meeting or gossip session or where we pile on the client and shame the team and you as the owner get all defensive. Trust me, this is not where everyone vents for an hour and then nothing changes. Instead, this debrief is going to be a leadership meeting. The strict purpose is to answer one question. What did this project teach us that needs to shape how we operate going forward? That's it. And I would divide it into 5 parts. Stick with me. Let's crack the nut. Part 1, what worked? Start with the wins. Always start with the wins. Not because we're avoiding the hard things, but because your business needs to know what to repeat. Designers are often so quick to fix what is broken that they forget to document what is actually working. But what worked is actually gold. A couple ideas. What did the clients love? Where did we create the value for them? What part of the process felt smooth? And where did the team communicate well? What vendor performed beautifully? See, these questions matter because scaling is not just about eliminating problems. It's also about repeating excellence. If you do not name the win, you cannot systemize the win. Maybe the client loved the design presentation because it was clear and visual and told the story beautifully, and that's great. That needs to become part of your standard. Okay, part 2, what broke? Now we move into the honest part. It's not who messed up. That is a very different question. We are not hunting for a person to blame. We're looking for the weak point in the system. How do we do this? We're going to ask questions like, where did the client get confused? Where did we have to repeat ourselves? Where did decisions stall? Where did the team not know who owned what? Or where did we overfunction? And where did I, as the owner, become the bottleneck? And where did we say yes when we should have paused? And here is the key. You have to be willing to hear the answer. If you ask your team what broke, but your face says, please do not tell me anything that makes me uncomfortable, well, guess what? They're not going to tell you the truth. If every piece of feedback turns into a defense, your team will stop bringing you information, and then you will be leading with partial visibility. And that, my friends, is dangerous because a CEO needs accurate information, not flattering information, accurate information. So if your team says we were confused about who is responsible for client follow-up, well, that's not an attack. See, that is information. If they say we did not know how to handle the contractor's questions, that is information. And I want you to hear me say this. Information is a gift, even when it is uncomfortable, especially when it is uncomfortable, because you cannot lead what you will not look at. All right, part number 3. What did it cost us? And this is the question most designers skip. I hear it all the time. Well, that was annoying, or that part was stressful, or we should do that differently next time, but they do not quantify the cost. And when you do not understand the cost, guess what? There's just not the same urgency to change. So I want you to be brutally honest. What did this cost us in time, in profit, in energy, in team morale, in client trust, creative capacity maybe? See, and this is where the light bulbs start coming on, because you may realize that the small extra revision round, well, it really wasn't that small at all. It took 6 hours of design time, 2 hours of project management time, delayed ordering by a week, frustrated the team, and created client expectation that options are unlimited. And that right there is not small. That is expensive, extremely expensive. See, you may realize you personally spent 10 hours solving issues that a trained team member could have handled if the process had been documented. And see, that right there is not just 10 hours. That is CEO time, strategy time, business development time, family time, rest time, creative energy. We have to just stop pretending that just this once is free. It is not free. Every exception has a cost. Every unclear process has a cost. Every avoided conversation, underpriced deliverable, they all come with a cost. And every time you say, oh, it's fine, I'll just handle it, guess what? Yeah, there's a cost. The debrief is what is going to help you see it. Okay, on to number 4. What decisions need to be made? And this is the most important part. Extremely important. Because a debrief without a decision, well, folks, that's just called a really good coffee session. We are not here to have another meeting that makes everyone feel productive but changes nothing. The goal is not to talk about the problem. The goal is to actually make your business better. So after you identify what worked and what broke and what it costs, then you ask, okay, what decisions need to be made before our next project? Not someday, not eventually, not, oh, we should think about that. No, I'm talking an actual decision. Let me give you a few examples. We are raising our minimum project fee. We're adding a paid revision round after 2 included rounds. We're no longer starting procurement without full written approvals and payment up front in full. That is what we require at our firm. We are creating a client communication policy and reviewing it during onboarding. Or we need to train the team differently or build a project closeout checklist. There are so many of them. And I need to stop being the answer hub for every decision. See, that is where scaling begins. It's not just more, it is better. Better decisions, better boundaries, better systems, communication and leadership, and most importantly, better use of your time, because you've heard me say it on this show before. We can make a lot more of a lot of things, but time is your most valuable resource because it is so limited. All right, here's the part that's going to sting a little. I'm just going to give you a heads up. The decision you're avoiding is often the ceiling you are living under. The conversation you're avoiding with your team, the price change you're avoiding, the scope boundary you're avoiding, the client fit standard you're avoiding, the feedback you're avoiding. See, all of that, those avoided decisions may be the very thing standing between the business you have and the business that I hear you saying that you want. All right, final one. Who owns the change? And this is where we're really going to move from the idea to the actual implementation. Because you're designers, you have brilliant insights and still not change anything if no one knows the next steps. So at the end of the debrief, every decision needs an owner. Who is updating the contract language? Who is revising the onboarding guide or the checklist? Who's updating the price structure or training the team? If everyone owns it, no one owns it. So assign ownership, give it a deadline, make the change visible. And this is what turns a debrief from a conversation into an actual scaling mechanism. All right, I want to talk with you about the mindset shift as well that needs to be happening, because this is where it gets tender. For many designers, looking at these facts feels scary because the business feels so incredibly personal. And I do hear you. Of course it does. You built this. Your name is probably on the door and your taste is involved and your relationships and reputation and creativity are all involved. And your clients are inviting you into their homes and their families and the most intimate part of what you do. This is deeply personal work. But I want to be careful here because your business cannot mature if every piece of feedback feels like a threat. If a client was confused, that does not mean you failed. It means your communication can be clearer. If your profit margin was not where it needed to be, that doesn't mean you should panic. It just means your numbers are telling you a story. See, data isn't an accusation. It is information. Feedback is not rejection. That right there, that's leadership material. All right. I know it can feel easier to move on. I know it can feel safer just to say that one was weird or that client was a toughie. Next time will be better. But next time is not automatically better. Next time becomes better when you make a different decision, when you lead differently, price differently, communicate differently, document differently, train differently. See, when you stop absorbing every problem as your own personal failure and start addressing it as a business owner, that right there is acting like a CEO. Not because you became cold, not because you stopped caring or become corporate or rigid or disconnected from the artistry of what we do, but because you actually care enough about the work and the clients and your team and even your own life to build a business that can actually hold the level of success that you are asking for. All right, I want to have a personal positioning moment for you. And this is one of the reasons I'm passionate about coaching other interior designers. Because I'm not looking at your business from the outside saying, oh, yeah, just systemize everything as if design work is simple. Please hear me out. I know it is not simple and that every project has moving parts. Clients change their minds, vendors make mistakes, and timelines shift, and it goes on and on and on. But I also know this. Adaptable cannot mean chaotic, and high touch cannot mean boundaryless, and creative content cannot mean unprofitable. See, client care cannot mean self-abandonment, and that right there is the work. That is what I help designers see. Not just how to make more money, but how to build a business that is strong enough to hold the work. I'm talking about a business with process and leadership and numbers you understand and offers that make sense with proper boundaries for clients and where feedback is normal and where your team knows how to win. That is how you become scalable. Let me give you a few examples of what this would look like in real life. Maybe you debrief a project and realize the client loved the final design, but the presentation process created too many open loops. They kept asking for more options because they did not understand the reasoning behind the selections. The decision might be, we are going to present fewer options with stronger rationale. We're going to explain why this is a recommendation, not just show what is available. And that right there, that's a CEO decision. Maybe it's you realize that your team spent too much time answering one-off client questions because there was no central communication rhythm. And maybe the decision is we are moving clients to one weekly update email and all non-urgent questions will be collected there. See that right there? That's a CEO decision, a huge one. Maybe your decision is we are creating a scope addendum process after the client said, can we just add the powder bath? No additional area gets designed until the added scope is approved and paid. That right there. Now we're talking a CEO decision. I want you to think about these CEO decisions. They require honesty. Notice that none of these decisions require drama. Instead, they're requiring leadership. They require the willingness to say, hey, we learned something and we're going to let that lesson change how we operate. And that is the whole point. I want to talk about feedback too, because it can be really hard to be vulnerable because this is about both giving and receiving feedback. And that can be really, really tough, especially if you built a culture where everyone is really nice. And listen, don't get me wrong. I love kindness. I want kind teams, respectful communication, and I want people to feel safe. But sometimes nice becomes avoidance and it's not kind. See, clarity is kind. Healthy feedback is kind. Direct communication is kind. When you create a culture where feedback is normal, you make the business safer. Not less safe, safer. Because now people don't have to guess. They don't have to carry resentment. They don't have to pretend everything is fine. They do not have to keep repeating the same avoidable mistakes. But I want to be really clear here that the tone does matter. Remember, it's not what you say. It's how you say it. So it can sound like, here's what I noticed, or here's the impact it had. Here's what I think we need next time, not, you always do this, you never do that. Oh, that was a disaster. See, the CEO question I want you to take with you out of this entire episode is, what is the decision your business has been asking you to make? Not the decision you wish it were asking. No. I wish it was that easy. That we're talking about the decision it is actually asking. Is it asking you to raise rates and stop taking on projects that are too small? Maybe it's defining your process more clearly or thinking about who you need to hire next. Maybe it needs you to stop being available all the time. Or maybe it's asking you to create a better closeout process or look at your numbers every week. Because I promise you, your business is giving you clues. The repeated frustration, that's a clue. Recurring client questions, team confusion, missed margins, resentment, exhaustion. Folks, that is a whole laundry list of clues. And the thing you keep saying just happened again. Yeah, well, that's a giant clue. Don't ignore it. Study it, because that is where the next level is at for you. All right, here is your next action step for this week. Choose one completed project, just one. Open a blank document and answer these questions. What worked? What broke? What did it cost us? What decisions need to be made? And who owns the change? I do not overcomplicate it. Do not make it precious. Do not wait until you have the perfect template. I just need you to start. You can't steer a parked car. Because the next level of your business may not require a massive overhaul. It may begin with one honest meeting and one clear decision. One moment where you stop saying, that was hard, and start asking, what is this here to teach us? If you want help doing that work, I would love to invite you to explore coaching with me. Head over to fixmydesignbiz.com and book a free 15-minute problem solving session. I want to hear the struggle you're facing. I want to hop on a call with you. I want to see how we would tackle it and if we would work well together. Again, that's fixmydesignbiz with a Z.com, because this is the work that changes your entire business. This is where sustainable success is built for you. And this is how I want to see you succeed. Thank you for caring about your clients, your craft, your team, and your own life to lead at a higher level. Thank you for being here, and thank you for doing this work. I know it's not easy, but I also know you don't want to stay where you are now. Until next time, take care, and remember, your business should be working for you, not you working for it.